What is up, guys, and welcome back to OWL by the Numbers, your one-stop spot for all things fantasy Overwatch League. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 22, we're going to change things up a bit. We are joined by FOWL from FantasyOWL.com to talk all about his new daily fantasy Overwatch League, which we've been testing on the side for a couple of weeks now, and I'm really excited to learn more about him as a creator and just learn more about the format and how everything is working. And as you can tell, we are a man down tonight. The King Edinar is not with us. So before
the king,
I mean,
the king,
the self-proclaimed king.
Okay,
you know,
all right.
See, here's the thing: with how many API issues we've had, like, can he really claim that? Like, how truthful can that claim actually be?
You know
at this
what?
point?
He has been nothing but like truthful though. Like even when it works out in his favor, he's been like, you know what? Like I didn't deserve that win. Like I got unfairly benefited. So I mean, it may be frustrating, but he's fair with it at least.
This is true.
I'm pretty sure he'd name himself the king even if he was losing hand over fist.
This is true.
I would not doubt that at all. But anyways, before we jump into the agenda for tonight and introduce you to everyone that is with me, let me just take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight are two of my co-hosts and of course our special guest. So let's first start by introducing our guest tonight. That is FOWL from, again, FantasyOWL.com. FOWL, thank you so much for taking some time out. I know we've been in constant discussion here as of late. We had a couple of hiccups this past week, unfortunately, with the API, but, that seems to be a recurrent thing, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that during our interview.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys for having me. This is really exciting as I've been working on and developing this platform with a couple of our team members. Listening to you guys in the morning on Wednesday has kind of been an ear to the ground of what's going on with fantasy Overwatch, and we actually even call the platform now, if you haven't noticed from the all the branding, Fantasy Owl. From a branded trademark perspective, we're staying with that. But yeah, I mean, I'm really happy to be on here and talk about this. And as you said, the API has been interesting, but it's allowed us more time to hone the site itself, add some more fun features, and hopefully make this a really fun experience for new users coming into Stage 4 especially.
Absolutely, and Stage 4 is probably going to have quite a bit of shakeups too, if that 222 does come to fruition. But joining me tonight are two of my co-hosts. First up, we have Blazing Bob, who is really hot off the heels of the WPR finale this past week.
Hey, Totem. Yeah, glad to be here. Kind of excited. Getting a little overly excited about 222. It's been leaked so much that it feels like it's just fact now, but just scared that like Blizzard's gonna be like, oh, it's fine now, and pull it back. But I'm pretty sure if they told the teams weeks ago, you can't really, we've seen pickups and stuff like Logix and Manga that kind of like really lean towards people need DPS because it's gonna be required. So I'm just excited about how that's gonna affect fantasy and just make it a little easier to set a lineup week to week.
Absolutely, and it's going to be exciting to just see DPS, players actually playing who they're known for, as opposed to, just being stuck in either Brig Jail or, playing Zarya, because you see someone like Carpe, who is one of the better hit scan players in the league, have been kind of like falling into like that 17th, 18th ranking in regards to actual Zarya statistics, which is not what you would normally expect from someone of his caliber. So outside of that, of course, we are joined by my Fantasy Overwatch League partner in crime, the man that has been dominating the podcaster showdown, that being none other than Julian Goulian, aka Rameses. Rameses, good to have you back.
Well, I don't know if you want to say dominating, because usually it's just you going, all right, here's our starting lineup for this week, and I just go, sounds good, with the thumbs up emoji, and then we win. So
that's me with Ed.
Well,
But
you
you're
don't
not
win.
winning.
I'm happy to be supporting. I'm just cheering Totem on as he makes our placements and just lets me know what he does. But I'm pretty good. It's been a good week. If I'm being honest, with the amount of API issues, it's been very hard to kind of like get invested in making any picks or like switching teams or team stuff around this week, just because we don't know what's going to happen. So it's always cool just to see another platform, another service kind of enter the arena, just because competition really makes everybody work their hardest to get better and to deliver a better product. So I'm excited.
Since everybody knows that I'm not actively in fantasy at the moment until stage 4, tell me what API issues we had, because I'm not totally sure.
Okay, so this past week, basically, I know, like FOWL was mentioning, like there were a couple of pickups really early on. So basically, like the first 2 days, we had like no stats at all.
Yeah, it was a complete shutout of all from everything on our end too that we were seeing was no updated stats for, I believe, both Thursday and Friday completely.
All you could hope for is that they took it down to fix it.
That's what I was really hoping. That's where I'm hopeful, because it did start to get better and they did start to put some back in that weren't there. I'm hoping between myself and I know the hundreds of other people out there that have been bugging on the forums to, hey, people rely on these stats and data to let's get some fix, let's get some eye on this. So I think this weekend will be really telling, because it's not the traditional Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's another Homestead. So hopefully they can manage and come through with Saturday, Sunday, and we can have a complete weekend.
Here's to hoping.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely seems to be something that's been happening more and more. But I can't confirm that, looking at the API, Blizzard did go back and patch even stuff from some of the prior weeks that were still missing. So it does make me a little bit more hopeful in the near future in regards to just getting these issues resolved. So that was a refreshing sight to see, as opposed to, just seeing those goose eggs in the stats, basically, like, going all the way back to, earlier weeks in this stage, and even going back to stage 2. So I know there's still, a couple of hiccups in regards to, like, highnoon.gg that I know Matt is looking into. Hopefully we'll get all of that sorted out, but definitely keep an eye on your wins and losses to make sure that your wins are actually counting like they should, and not the other way around, because I know there's been a little bit of shenanery, as Spider would put it, in regards to that.
Just slightly.
Yeah, just a little bit. But all of Ramses and I, in regards to our wins, all of ours are legit. So we got that.
Of course.
I'm just trying to get over Ramses in this tank top here.
Dude, it's warm.
The gun. Should I pull mine up too, so we can do it together?
FOWL's got his sleeves up too. You just can't see them. But.
Shirt's off. Shirt's off.
For all I know, he's an owl. So there is that.
Yeah, and just put my beak in some water to stay cool.
I know it's stuff like that. I know there's just display issues that happen. I know Ed actually today asked me how much my unlimited team scored, because I scored like around 814 points, although Ed said that my team looked like it scored 300 points total.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just there's display issues. Like Totem said, there's times where like it's gone back and forth. Like I've joked about it on the show where like I know 100% I won a game and then it gave the victory to Ed. And then vice versa, where like there's no way that I should have won a game and then it gave me the win when somebody else definitely deserved it. So,
and like you'll see that in regular fantasy sports, they always say all scores are not final until Monday morning. But I mean, that's them recording something that's happening live, right? Like you would think that computers would just get it right, but I guess I guess that's not the case,
I mean, what do the machines know? They're not self-learning yet, so we got.
This is why I'm not afraid of the robots yet. Not yet.
We're not quite in Terminator range as of yet. But anyways, so it is worth noting that this is a homestand weekend. We're not really going to deep dive into unlimited drafts for this week, but obviously, this week is kind of a pretty mixed bag in regards to good teams. So I would say, like, maybe this is a better week to gamble on some of the lesser teams, just due to the fact that we do have some kind of like 14th through 20th ranked teams going up against one another, so those should be close, but we'll see how many actually go to a Met 5. But I have to say, like, looking at the lineup this week in regards to the actual schedule, like, I want better. Like, we have New York and we have Shanghai, right? Basically, and then it's just like we have like all of these other teams kind of just hodgepodge in there that really don't stand out. But, you know, for Atlanta, they at least got a winnable weekend, so maybe they'll be able to bounce back.
Don't count out the crowd, dude. The crowd is so powerful. I mean, it's nuts. Like, don't count that out for a second. I actually picked Atlanta to win both games, and I don't think I would have picked them if they weren't in Atlanta.
You picked Atlanta to beat Toronto and Florida? That's a brave choice there, Bob.
I mean, they haven't been doing very good. I would have picked them over Florida normally, but I wouldn't have picked them over Toronto.
I mean, we did make the point that, like, it's kind of telling. At least, I don't know if it was intentionally for this, but them putting New York versus Toronto on as like the last game of the day. So just in case Atlanta manages to lose to Florida, at least we get to watch New York like eviscerate Toronto at the end of the day and leave kind of happy.
So that's like a consolation prize, is what you're saying?
It might be. I'm just like, it's Atlanta. Why isn't the Atlanta game last on the final day? It just seems kind of weird.
It is definitely kind of weird.
Say too, it seems, you know, kind of convenient that for the one that's on ABC and ESPN. I mean, both of these could go 5 maps. They could be competitive. They're not. You know, I feel like for getting more eyes on it, it might be a best case scenario for Overwatch League in this situation. So it'll be interesting to see if the numbers are still the same as they were back when they did the Dallas one.
Well, we know this is going to draw numbers. We have 2 pay-per-view caliber 1v1s because we got the Widowmaker going 1-on-1 with Baby Bay in a Widowmaker 1v1.
I might be even more hyped for that one just because Baby Bay has just been annihilating Bren on social media about this whole thing.
Absolutely, and, you know, he's also been dropping some swears during the live broadcast, so, you know, he's got that going as well.
Well, you know why that changed, right? So Bren and DeFran played, and they tried it out, and DeFran had 200 ping, and Bren still couldn't move. Like, literally just couldn't move. He was dead immediately every single time. I think they said DeFran missed, like, 1 or 2 shots in, like, a few rounds.
Okay.
So it was just like, well, maybe we should put something more funny up, you know, like, because, like, people haven't seen DeFran play it in a while unless you watch his stream, but dude can play Widow at the level that everybody else in the league can also.
So what I'm gathering, Bob, is they're like, you know, we gotta give Bren at least a chance to get 1 kill, so then they throw in Baby Bay in there to see if that's going to alleviate the issue.
Well, and his Widows never looked, like, amazing. Like, it's looked okay at times. He's had flashes at times in season 1, but I mean, it's never looked like his soldiers looked or his Farah looked. I don't remember him doing a lot of McCree, but yeah, like, I just remember him standing out on Farah and Soldier quite often.
Well, because they would bring him in for like the Pine role, for like they'd bring him in for the control map to go and like just click a bunch of heads and then just take him back out of the game immediately.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just remember him struggling on Widow. We could have got better since then, though.
I'm telling you, all I want is for Baby Bay. Like, Bren comes out, like, does his whole walk up to like the stage. And then I want Baby Bay to roll out like in a limo with like with the 2 girls and like the little pump wig and like swag dance up onto the stage and then dab on Bren and then just destroy Bren in this 1v1.
That'd be pretty good.
I'll personally give Baby Bay $5 if he does it. It's a tempting offer.
Yeah, especially when you compare that to, you know, his annual contract with the Overwatch League. That's really going to give him some incentive.
$5 is $5, man. I'm just saying.
Yeah, give it a combo meal. But anyway, so outside of that, we also have the Mangachu versus Defran Torbjorn Hammer only 1v1, which is going to be pretty spicy as well. And Rameses, I know you and Labasco actually have something at stake, which is still yet to be determined. So I want to, go back to that really quick to, kind of hear the behind-the-scenes story behind that actually starting up.
Well, because we were in the middle of the show, like we were just going to talk about it and like place our bets on it. Oh, for my podcast, and then the boss was like, "No, like this is important. Like we have to like actually make a bet on this." And I tried to like throw a skin bet out of it. He's like, "No, it's more like it's something that we have to do a bet that is worthy of the greatest battle of our time. Like we have to do something that is as important as this Mangachu versus."
You could do the Lord bet for all of stage 4. Where you have to refer to the other person as Lord, blah blah blah.
That would actually be a good one. I'll throw
that one goes on recording every week.
We're still trying to like. I think we're still like picking like Totem said, like we're still trying to pick like what our punishment's going to be. Totem actually suggested that we might even do like whoever loses has to do a diss track against the owl player that let them down that week.
See, and I feel like I want Labasco to lose then, because I think he would throw down a mad rap.
He's from Chicago. I mean, it's it would work. I don't know. I'm excited for it. I know he's got Defran. I've got Mangachu, which I got Mangachu because he was nice enough to let me go first. So I'm excited for it. We have some sort of punishment going down, and hopefully I don't lose.
Especially not knowing what the punishment is going to be.
Yeah. We'll have it decided by the time this is probably out on podcatchers, I think.
Absolutely. So it is worth noting that because this is a home set weekend, that means we have Thursday and Friday off. It also means that we only have 2 days of Fantasy Daily Overwatch League this week, which we will talk about in a bit. But, taking a look at this, Atlanta does have a soft schedule, as Bob had mentioned. On Saturday, they face a Toronto Defiant. And then on Sunday, Atlanta's going up against the Florida Mayhem. So I think for me, I'm really curious to see how Florida Mayhem fans are going to travel to this, because it still is relatively within driving distance from Florida. So I'm curious to see if we're going to have the 4 Mayhem fans all show up to this, which would be fantastic. Then they could throw their parade, much like I'm trying to get casual OWL fans to do, since 2 of them is like a small gathering.
Well, they're going up. I know they're going up there for it. So
we're already halfway there, is what you're telling me.
We can confirm, actually, because I know they said they have another friend that's going. We can confirm that there are going to be 3.
Oh, man.
At least 3 Mayhem fans in attendance.
I know a couple of the guys from the Mayhem Maniacs podcast are going. I was talking to Lego Man, so I know they will be there. But depending on where you're at in Florida, it could be anywhere from a 12-hour drive to a 4-hour drive. Mm-hmm. So it's not super close, but I guess it is close enough to drive.
Right. So looking at that first match against Toronto, Toronto has been an interesting case. They recently picked up Mangachu and Logix, both of whom had debuted here in the past week. We got to see Mangachu playing a lot of projectile. Of course, Logix was popping off on Hitscan, as we would expect him to do, and that is his return to the Overwatch League, with, Mangachu coming into the Overwatch League for the very first time. So, I have to say, these 2 teams are kind of facing one another at a time where there really hasn't been a whole lot of movement from them in regards to where they are results-wise. They have been middling out here as of late, but when we're talking about the home crowd and just looking at how some of the past homestands have been, Dallas definitely kind of leveled up in their home environment, so we're pretty much expecting Atlanta to do the same, but I don't know how much they actually need to level up against the competition that they are facing. But looking at that Defiant Reign series, who do you think is going to come out ahead? Do you guys feel like the Defiants, now that they have had a little bit more time to, gain some synergy, are going to be able to upset Atlanta in their home arena?
Well, I don't know where Mangachu and Logix were, geographically, where they were located before they came over. So if they were
Florida
located out of
and-
state, then they're going to be jet lagged bad because they just got to LA and now they're flying out to Atlanta. I mean, they're probably going to be a little bit off of their game in that regard.
I mean, Mangachu was in. Well, I don't know if he was in Florida, but he was playing for Mayhem Academy, then to Revival, where I don't know Revival was located.
But I mean, but they could have been. I mean, not all the contenders teams are living together.
Right.
Mhm.
So I mean, they could have been in different spots of the country. I mean, Trill was still down under, right? He was still in New Zealand.
Gotta play with that 200.
Not Australia. It's Color Hex that's from New Zealand, but I'm pretty sure he was still playing there with 300 ping.
Yeah, if anything, I think the matchup, like looking at this game, I think it's really going to come down to the tank lines and everything. I think we know that like the Atlanta like support line are really big playmakers, but like they are pretty vulnerable if you pick them the right way. And then I think it's just going to come down to whether or not Dako and Pokwil can win that battle against Gods and Yakpung. I think Yakpung is the one who's starting more now than Sharik is, right?
They've been experimenting more. I don't think we've had like a clear sign that they're gonna go one direction over the other, but it does seem like Yakpun has been seeing the bulk of the playtime, at least here in the prior week.
What was Hex calling him? YXL? Is that right?
That's
Well, that
Yang
was-
Zhao Long. That's a different
Yeah,
player.
Yang Zhelong. Okay, thanks.
No, the hard part is I have a super hard time ever not believing in Logix just because that man was getting 4Ks just out of nowhere for Toronto this last week.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it was Toronto, so they weren't following up and winning those fights at all, but Logix is good enough. We know Mangachu got signed. I think a good part of it being that like he already has a prior history with Logix on XL2, so they work well together already. His Pharah looked really, really good. So I think shocker, I think Toronto actually might pull this off. I think they might barely squeak it out in a 3-2.
Yeah, I would have totally said Toronto if it was at the LA arena, but I think the power of the crowd wins out. What about you, FOWL?
So this one is Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I was just playing with the microphone again. So this one's kind of interesting to me. So when we price out the players on their levels and when you actually put a lineup together, one of the biggest factors that we determine is if the map has the probability of going to 5 maps, or if the match has the probability of going to 5 maps. And this one, as far as a couple of them, is actually showing the highest probability of that. So I think Atlanta will do it at home. I think they're kind of due to put one together, even though Toronto's been looking better. But with I know a lot of people down there that are so excited, and as you were saying, the home crowd just makes such a difference, and I can't imagine there's going to be a ton of Toronto down there. So I think they could give it out. I'm predicting a 3-2 win for Atlanta.
So moving into Saturday, we do have a match that is playoff implications, and for Shanghai, they are one of 2 teams that are competing this weekend that are looking to secure those final 2 slots. The other one being New York Excelsior, who are currently 5-0. So they basically need to just not, lose like 8 maps basically to make the playoffs. So basically just win a map and they should be good. For Shanghai, they basically need to secure another win in order to make the playoffs, and we will finish in the top 8. But you have the Guangzhou Charge, who are sitting here with a very, very outside shot of actually making the Stage 3 playoffs. It is very unlikely because they are going to need some help. Same with like teams like I'm trying to think. Philadelphia Fusion was another team that was in the discussion.
Gladiators were the other ones I think that could qualify.
But the map differentials for those teams are not the best, so there's going to be a lot of situations where they basically need some of these teams that are above them to lose anywhere from like 5 to 8 maps in order just to have that outside shot at making it. But you have the Charge, who have definitely been throwing a couple of different looks out there. They've been doing a lot of experimentation with Nero in the lineup. And I don't know like where exactly they're going to land him with, but you have the Dragons recently who picked up Envy. So we've seen the Dragons incorporate in more D.Va play as a whole, and of course the Dragons were really like one of the first teams to incorporate the Sombra play, which has been very prevalent throughout this current stage, and that's continued to expand further and further as this stage has progressed, so much to the point where, you know, even week to week we're still seeing like a jump of like 10 to 15% of Sombra pick rate, even going into this late into the stage. And of course, with that, we've seen teams trying to deal with Sombras in a couple of different ways. We've seen, you know, counter Sombra. We've been seeing, like, for the Shock, they've been running a lot of Baptiste in their 3-3 and just trying to stick with that. And if you're, you know, a team like the Hangzhou Spark, they're like, yeah, we're just going to run 3-3 and still win, and we're just going to, you know, move Gushui off of Reinhardt onto Winston, so...
The character he's even better at, yay.
Yeah, play to your
Primal
strengths.
Blade.
Absolutely. So it's one of those things, you know, we always talk about playing to your strengths, and, you know, a team like the Spark definitely leveled up in that regard. But, you know, Shanghai, they have been coming in, and, you know, everyone knows the story of Shanghai this prior season during the inaugural season, and now they have a very good opportunity at securing their second playoff berth. So it's really just a breath of fresh air. Yeah, we're talking playoffs, Bob.
Playoffs?
I mean, we have 6 of the 8 teams clinched at this point for the Stage 3 playoffs, but when we look at these teams, Dragons have really kind of been in the middle of the pack in regards to the Chinese teams, with the Charge constantly lagging behind both Shanghai and the Hangzhou Sparks. And when we look at this match, who do you guys tip in this? Do you guys feel like the Charge are just going to try to run a lot of 3-3? Because I know Rio's definitely been looking good on Reinhardt. Or do you feel like the Dragons are going to keep throwing these different looks out at them?
I don't know. I think for me, it becomes a thing of like how many, like, how far do I have to believe? Like, I'm not saying correctly, but like, how many things would have to happen for me to believe that Guangzhou would actually win this? I think Shanghai is just too good at this point. Guangzhou still has some things that just aren't tying up together. They've looked better recently, but they haven't looked good enough, I think, to take a serious run, or not even a serious run, because like stuff has to work out for them to make it right now. But I don't see right now. I don't see Shanghai dropping the ball enough for Guangzhou to actually take the game.
Yeah, I wish I could give specific details, but I can't see how the Shanghai Dragons would lose. Charge, they've tried a bunch of different things, but it just doesn't seem to work out. And yeah, I don't know. Play happy and pray.
Happa just needs to basically play like 18 heroes. I think that's what it's going to take for the Charge in this case. How do you think this one's going to shake up? Do you feel like Dragons are still going to be the heavy favorites?
We need the cricket's cue.
We do.
Oh, sorry. I got this new microphone, and it doesn't tell me if it's muted or not. But no, in all honesty, I think Shanghai takes this relatively easy. It's a little more it's probably I'd say Fusions and Justice is probably the next most competitive after Atlanta and Defiant. But this one, everything that I see and what we're thinking is that Shanghai takes this one, and probably with a 3-1.
All right, so moving on to Sunday, Atlanta closes out their homestand against the Florida Mayhem. So, we'll have all 4 to 6 on the high end, probably Mayhem fans, all in attendance. Whether or not they're all going to be together, is another thing, but we'll see how that unfolds. But maybe Antoine won't just be the only Mayhem fan on camera, which would be a change of pace since really the inception of the Overwatch League. But we've seen the Mayhem starting to put more of their pieces into play here as of late. They are fielding a 12-man roster. We got to see, a couple of new faces this past week, and, we're still waiting on a couple of people to come into play as well, but the Mayhem are definitely basically setting the course for the next season now that they have picked up everyone that they've wanted to sign, outside of, some other players that were rumored that they didn't actually end up picking up, like Myeonbun, for example, being one of them. But, they got Gargoyle, but Zephyr's still been playing a bulk of the playtime, so I'm really curious to see what look we're going to get out of the Mayhem.
He's just so good in scrims, Totem. Haven't you understood?
That's basically what it is.
His Bastion play is just out of this world.
Well, the thing with Florida, we know that they're working with their newer coaches right now, whether they're actually there locally or maybe they're coming in from another location. I still think that it's going to take another couple weeks for this roster to really kind of click the way that we need that. Not we need to, but I think that they need to actually start taking wins off of some other teams. I also think that Atlanta is for sure, if we're going to lose any games, we are not going to lose this Florida game. We need to win this Florida game. So I don't know if it would get the majority of the prep time, but they've definitely prepped for Florida because they cannot afford to lose to Florida in their home venue with a hometown crowd.
Yeah, it really doesn't say a lot for home field advantage if they can't take this one. I mean, I'm hoping they can ride off of a Saturday win in quote unquote prime time, but this, I mean, it just seems they need it, because if they drop both in Atlanta, that would not be great.
I think that would be the best look for Atlanta. They get home, they go 0-2, and then everyone's just well, what do we do at this point?
Yeah, that's like what my Red Sox just did in London. It was really embarrassing.
But it was a London game, so not that many people saw it.
I mean, it is poetic justice for the Yankees to win in London, so I mean,
yeah. Well, technically, it was a home game for Boston. Whatever that, we went back home to the original.
I don't even know historically if that would even work, but
I don't know. Yeah, trying to forget about it.
This game will be interesting. Whereas I think that Florida has a couple, not Florida, I'm sorry. Whereas Toronto has a couple players who could just solo carry an entire team behind them, like Logix. I think Florida has a similar case with Saya player, but I think that the supporting cast is still either worse or just too disjointed to even do it, to be able to follow up at all. Worse than the Toronto situation, I think.
Absolutely. So kind of looking across the board here, who do you guys feel like is going to come out ahead in regards to the actual fantasy projections for the week? Are there any players in particular that really stand out amongst the pack between these 8 teams that are competing?
I say this every week, and I will stand by it. You got to believe in the king himself, Baby Bay. The final weeks that just in the matchups. No, dude, Baby Bay shreds every time, but even when they lose, he's always just destroying as far as stats go.
So I gotta agree. Actually, Baby Bay is our highest ranked player on the site as far as level and salary cap goes.
The king.
Yep, he's right at the top, both from a combination of exactly what you're saying, and Atlanta as a whole has been really interesting for how much they lose as a whole. At least on our platform, they're actually, if you take everyone, one of the most fantasy relevant teams. They continuously put up stats and numbers besides losing. Even if it doesn't go 5 maps, and Baby Bay especially has been absolutely crushing it, averaging on ours, which scores a little higher than High Noon, but this stage for fantasy points per game, he's got 200.
Yeah, and on that note too, I do want to mention, even in the games that have been complete blowouts, what I've seen with this system is the fact that there's been a lot of times where I just pick Gray from Paris Eternal as one of my support players, and even if Paris gets 3-1 or 4-0, he still averages 130, 140 points, which is still relatively good for the platform. And it's crazy to see just the point differential between a close series and just a complete blowout, because they're still putting up pretty good numbers, even if they might not have the best week overall stat-wise. They're still earning quite a bit of points.
Mm-hmm. I mean, aside from Baby Bay, I don't really know who else is going to be extremely fantasy relevant for this weekend. You can make the argument for Carpe or EQO just because they're getting to play a little bit more DPS. I mean, yeah, Toronto players haven't really put up like massive numbers. No, neither has anybody on Guangzhou. I think maybe Ding or DM on Shanghai, but like no one else really seems to like is like a huge fantasy playmaker.
Yeah, and I think you have to take into account anybody that you think is going to be playing a bunch of Widow with this like crazy like current meta we're in. Then you got to think like that's not going to be the best points. It's not a whole lot of damage, you know what I mean? And if you're on a platform that doesn't give extra points for killing blows, then
So with that being said, of course, we are here to talk about Daily Fantasy Overwatch League, which is going to be, a pretty new format for a lot of people out there. If they're not familiar with, sites like, FanDuel, DraftKings, probably being the other primary one. But we're here with FOWL to talk all about the system in place. But before we jump into, the Daily Fantasy Overwatch League, let's learn more about his background, just in regards to, the system, everything that kind of goes into play there, and also where you basically got started. So, FOWL, I'm always curious to see whether or not this interest kind of sparked due to the fact that you've had prior ventures into fantasy sports or even esports. I know for esports, it's still relatively new across the board regardless of what title. So where exactly did you get your start in the fantasy aspect?
Yeah, for fantasy as a whole, I mean, I come from years and years of just die-hard, obsessed fantasy football. Absolutely love it. I'm the commissioner of multiple leagues of my friends, and one that is just beyond serious. It's a super competitive. Actually, every year we do our draft at we rent out a room of a local movie theater, and you actually walk up, you make your picks, you have walkout music and stuff, and draft order is determined by Super Smash Brother characters on CPU, where you get to pick your character and you have them battle them out. And there's a whole it's like a whole half-hour bracket before the draft where you move through it. It's a lot of fun, and I'm glad Overwatch League takes place opposite of football, because I do notice my productivity is a little lower during the fantasy football season. And that's kind of where it started. And I'm a kind of person, I'm always, starting. I love doing projects, starting new things, kind of having, fun spins on, different things that are out there. And what really kind of started with this, I guess I haven't had a direct venture in fantasy as far as a business or a platform goes. I have a lot of exposure to esports in general. Actually, on the VR side, I would work a lot of trade shows and running, and I just got to see the esports blow up really, and more people talking about, whether it be League of Legends and now Overwatch League. And but with fantasy football and fantasy sports, I had wanted to make a platform originally that had started to combine, added some more fun elements.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys. We gotta get in.
Yeah, wait for the exclusive elephant logos that'll look for your team. No, but I was exploring ways that we could you could take traditional fantasy sports and make it more fun and gamify it, give it a little more video game aspect. And it had been something I was toying with on and off for a while. The kind of project would pick it up here, put it down, pick it back up, and then halfway through last season of Overwatch League, I started watching. I really got into it. I was very familiar with it. I'd been watching it on and off, but I wasn't super engrossed in it. And then I really got into it and got fascinated with this is the first esport to really put a traditional sports model in place, with whether it be having a true season, having playoffs instead of just one-off tournaments that everywhere. So it kind of opened my eyes to be like, okay, now there's something that we can have fantasy and have it be manageable with in the esports realm. So I kind of repicked up what was originally a traditional fantasy sports platform and started to spin it and be like, okay, let's let's focus on esports. Let's focus on Overwatch. Let's focus on League of Legends. Let's focus on, Counter-Strike and see how we can do that. And I wanted to start with Overwatch because it really seems to be taking that leap forward for the next step for esports, to be on the big stage, to have a professional level and have a true league. And I'm really hoping that other esports are going to follow suit, because I think it makes a ton of sense. It allows you to, really align with teams, be more familiar with players, and actually get excited for a season, as opposed to just nonstop tournaments on the other side of the world where one team might be playing on both on the same day and you can't really identify with it. So that was kind of how it started. And it's been a lot of fun, and now we want to really keep our focus on fantasy esports and continue to gamify the experience, whether it be with achievements or experience points, coins. Add a little more fun feel to this, where people that are completely new to fantasy but are into esports or gaming might recognize, and then the other way around, that people maybe aren't as familiar with esports but are familiar with fantasy, that can come in and jump in and know the platform and play right away, and add that element of engagement to watching esports that we've had for so long with traditional sports. That makes it really fun.
Right, and
Yep.
I know for Bob here lately, you did kind of like take a little bit of a fantasy hiatus, and when we look at daily, fantasy leagues in general, like you definitely like to talk about like the commitment differential between the traditional league as opposed to a daily one. So this is something that people can just come in, get out at that point, and they could just play as they feel fit, rather than kind of feel obliged to constantly have to stay ahead of the curve, or just constantly taking a look at the waiver wire. So it's definitely a good way to kind of bring more and more people into the fantasy side, and then if this is something that they're interested in, they could venture out and find other ways to play as well.
Yep, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's not as big of a commitment. If there are API breaks, you don't get as pissed off. It's one day instead of like a culmination of an entire season. And so, yeah, it's a pretty exciting model, especially early on. And I'm pretty excited for it. That's
Yeah,
actually, I mean, your reason for getting into this was the same as mine. Like the league format, I was like, finally, I could get really into esports.
yeah, and it has made it more fun to watch. And even friends of mine that don't watch Overwatch League and stuff, that have wanted to test out the platform, all of a sudden we've been in a test phase for a while, but everyone's starting to hit me up just like, hey, are you making contests today? Like, there's a bar that's playing this match, and I want to submit a lineup in. So it's been really fun. And with the and originally we did set out to do seasonal, and it was just I started to see some of the challenges there. I still think there's a great place for it. I think there's ways it can be tweaked, and we might offer some variations. Some like stage specific best ball down the road is something we've been playing with, where you still have a draft, but there's just too much difference in the stages, especially right now with Overwatch League, and it's such a young sport where they're gonna basically switch up and do a 2-2-2 lock, which for fantasy I'm actually really excited about it. You can have your opinion on it otherwise, but on my end it does make things a little easier to price players out. So yeah, I think that'll be really interesting going forward, where you fill out a roster that isn't going to change. Like I like the idea of a flex. Right now on our platform, we limit to 6 players, and it is 2 DPS, 2 tanks, 1 support, and then a flex. But if they do implement the 2 lock, I think for stage 4 we will also lock it at 2-2-2, just to stay true with what's going on.
Makes sense. So with that being said, FOWL, obviously all of us kind of have our favorite teams and our favorite players to follow, whether it is, actually in the Overwatch League, or also in the Fantasy Overwatch League. I know for myself, looking at like unlimited drafts, I tend to run primarily Fury and Janu for my tank duo, and that hasn't quite translated to daily just because, well, they're not always going to be playing like in the traditional league. But looking at the league as a whole, like, who are your favorite players or teams to kind of follow, and does that lead to any biasness in regards to selecting them when you're putting together your lineups in daily?
So I'm from Boston, and actually one of the ways that I even found out, like I had played Overwatch, was very familiar with it, but one of the ways I really got turned onto the league was before it started. Just with events that I was working and stuff, I had heard Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, has bought an esports team, and that really, I was like, and then I saw it was Overwatch League, and I'm like, oh wow, that's really exciting, and that's when I started really paying attention to all of this. So Boston Uprising is, definitely my team, for better or for worse, especially right now. especially right now. And as far as daily goes, they're kind of like playing New England Patriots players, right? In fantasy football, they're really unreliable right now with the kind of carousel of support and DPS that's going on. I've always liked. I like fusions because I like the idea of a British guy being on the Boston Uprising team. But really, as I've been building this out, I think the players that I've started to really like and favorite, and I think my favorite player going into this stage was Prophet, just because I really got into Overwatch League, especially towards the end of season 1, and going into the actual playoffs and the championship run. Watching him do work like that was just so impressive to me, and he was someone that I was like, really sold me on this whole sport. But I think a lot of the players I like now, because I've been pretty much the whole season been watching these players from a fantasy perspective. So it's really the players that have been putting up a lot of fantasy points. Obviously, I like a lot of the guys on New York Excelsior, Nene, Jonak, but Nene especially. Jonak's been like, here and there, but maybe not as good as everyone thought, but starting to get there. But I think the biggest surprise that I was saying, Atlanta Reign, for a team that gets their butt kicked, filled with fantasy relevant people. And I know Bebe came on, a lot of people thought he couldn't really fill the roles that they needed, but from a fantasy perspective, absolutely killing it. So I really, if I'm making a lineup, I like to see who they're playing. See if they have a shot to put up a fight, because even in defeat, they put up a lot of points. And then I tend to kind of New York Excelsior I'll go to, but I'll try to avoid some of the Shock and Vancouver, the almost too dominant, where they're just wiping people out and you're not getting those fantasy points. So if fantasy Overwatch in general has really driven me towards those middle range, middle team players that maybe I probably wouldn't watch if I was just watching as a fan perspective. So that's been really fun.
Well, at least as a Boston fan, you're used to them going to Mat 5, so...
Yeah, they're good for that. Yeah, you don't know who's the roster that's going to be going to Mat 5.
Yeah, we definitely talk about, some of the reported, behind-the-scenes drama kind of going on with the support line, which is why we've been seeing a lot of weird things in regards to the swap in and out, in regards to, Kelix and AimGod. We'll see what that's going to mean moving forward, but Kelix and AimGod both finished up the stage with the Uprising in the Sarnan lineup, as opposed to Alamon and Persia. So I'm really curious to see that, but really it's kind of been the same case with Seoul Dynasty, one of the teams that I primarily root for. Who, by the way, I finally got all my Dynasty skins in game, so I can work on Titans at this point.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I it's complete, and I saved Reaper for last just because he's a trash hero. But anyways, so we're obviously Daily Fantasy Overwatch League is a newer concept, and when it comes to the format in particular, one of the main questions that people are going to want to know is where exactly are you pulling the statistics from? Yeah.
So originally when we had set up, we were actually using and actually I'll be interested to get your thoughts on this too, because you guys have also played on Winston's Lab last year. I believe.
For better or worse.
Yeah, so exactly. So when I was originally setting this up, and we had been looking about where to get our data, we had found a provider that was very good, and I don't know if it's what Winston's Lab uses, but it's similar, where it uses an AI to scrape the screen for what's happening on during a match. So you were getting final kills, deaths, ultimate ups, things like that, but you weren't getting healing, you weren't getting damage, you weren't getting true eliminations. And I spent a lot of time setting that original one up with the team a little bit, and it just got to the point where, even with the Blizzard Overwatch API being spotty here and there, we kind of came to the conclusion, and as you guys might have as well, that it's just too important not to have those stats. It's too relevant to the game. It's like, playing fantasy football without yards, right? It's just like, forget about receptions or anything like that. And so we did ended up, and that's why we're even coming out a little later in the season, is because we then pivoted over to the official Blizzard Overwatch API, which as far as getting rosters and player and everything has been great. As recently their stats have been a little bit buggy on getting certain maps, because they score everything on a per map basis, and if your player suddenly doesn't have map 3, then it's going to be a detriment. I'm calling these right now the ACL tears of esports, where sometimes it just happens. You don't know who it's going to happen to. That's my way of looking at it on a positive note and making it similar to other sports. But that's why also we are excited about daily, because if there is a bug, you can jump into matches the next day. It's not going to you're not locked into the whole weekend or an actual match. You can just there's always a new set to jump into, and hopefully we'll work through those issues as the platform and the sport itself grows. We're really hoping soon that Blizzard and Overwatch offers an official solution that can be counted on. I think this weekend in particular will be telling, because I know there's been a lot of noise, and I've personally gotten some response back from teams saying that it seems like there's going to be more of an effort put into keeping this update and with the platform and the app. And I mean, it's just important to esports to know these stats, to have these numbers. It's such a huge element to sports, and it's how content creators like yourself even can talk about it and have continuous conversations and have these numbers to go to. So yeah.
Well, do you have any plans for what you're going to do for your site when there are API issues?
Yeah, so we have ways that we've been playing with where we can get most of the data from the artificial screen grabs, but still the healing and damage does require a bit of work. So we're playing with the options right now. We might have a back. We're looking at doing possibly a back end where if a player doesn't work, then it would default to a comparable set of stats that would include actual kills and deaths. But I've been playing with it. I'm not in love with it yet, because I don't think it is just too much of a swing from how other players are being scored. So we're keeping an eye on it, and I think the best you can do, we kind of will keep matches open throughout the weekend, and say even if the contest technically ends at the end of the week and there's not stats in there, we'll keep it open until Monday to carry over if there was an issue. If there isn't an issue reported, we'll have that close and you'll get your results immediately. So that's kind of how we're going to do it for now, is on a per case basis. We see, okay, there's a big issue here, especially if it's in matches where we're offering something. We do want to offer prizes. There is discussion and set up for competitive contests for money. So we're only going to roll those out when we feel really comfortable with the with the data that we're getting.
Cool.
Absolutely. So, when it comes to like actually earning the points, so what sort of stats are you looking at primarily, and like what sort of the like damage to healing like per point ratio in this format that you guys are doing?
Yeah, and I mean, so the scoring that you guys talked throughout the season's been, I believe it's half point per elimination, 1 point per 1,000 healing, and 1 point per 1,000 damage. Ours is pretty similar. Ours is just, if you think of like half point PPR and full point PPR, we kind of have that take on it where it's 1 point for elimination minus half a point for a death. Because we didn't want to, because there's a lot of factors that can go into a death. Obviously, it can even be self-inflicted as part of strategy.
Like Dante.
Yes, but I also
he was motivating his team while he walked out. I feel like he gets like maybe 25 motivational points.
Exactly, and but we decided to include that for two reasons. One, we think if adding the upping eliminations to a full point and having the half point for a death, it does add a little bit of balance, and it's actually not that much different than not having it. Sometimes it does make a difference, and I think it helps with when a team is really, really doing well. Then you actually see you get to feel that impact as opposed to them doing well and you not getting a lot of fantasy points. And then for healing and damage, it's just 1 point per 1,000 again. So you'll probably see some scores that are a little bit higher than what you've been doing, but I don't think it's anything too insane. It's really just the full point for the elimination and then the half point for the death. And when we have so limited stats to pull from, I want to get all the ones that we can. So I think it's important to have death in there. Hopefully we start to. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just curious if there's an API for killing blows, because I feel like that's a really important stat that doesn't get looked at.
Yeah. So the original one that we were doing we actually were pulling in killing blows, but not eliminations. And in terms of setup and doing everything timely, it kind of became a one or the other because there were two completely separate APIs, either going the official or going with the screen share. What we would like to do if we're not going to, and I know the official Overwatch API does have killing blows, but not on a per map basis, like how everything else is scored. So it's a little trickier. So we would like to explore possibly combining the APIs that we're using if we're feeling we're not on a path to get more stats from the official API. And that would also allow us to include some stats on ultimates as well, which could add it could add a little bit. It's ultimate ups, kind of like which isn't isn't quite ultimate effectiveness, but as I was saying, with such a few handful of stats, it's nice to pull in what you can.
Well, and you got to be careful with ultimate ups too, because some
it's going to
some
favor
heroes
some
get it
DPS.
so much faster.
That's why we got away from. But when we switched to the eliminations over the killing blows is because it does. I agree. I think a mix between the two would be ideal. And if we can combine the two APIs where we were getting them, then that could be a really cool solution to add an extra element to the game.
So with all these different features in the API, I mean, and you're talking about like further changes that are hopefully coming as well, what necessarily goes into calculating like an individual player's like contract price when you're going to go pick them on your roster?
Right. So, and that's what I've had this season. So we do, like you would see with DraftKings or FanDuel, there is a salary, but we call it a level cap. So you have a level cap of 100, and each player is allocated a certain level. The better performing players, or players that are projected to score the most fantasy points, are ranked a higher level. So 20 or anything between 20 and 25 is really high, and you can often almost find a little bit of correlation, not quite between what their projected fantasy points per game are and then their level. The way that it works is, without giving away everything because it's this. We've actually put a lot of work into this formula. It factors in, primarily what their fantasy points per game average is, then their play time, and how likely they are to play the entire match, and then as the stage goes on, their stage usage. So it does update every match. So as the stage goes on, it will reflect the previous one, and we do always take into account previous matches. But when a new stage starts, we will heavier weight a stats from the first week of a new stage, because that can often be a reflection of how things are going to go. And then the biggest thing where you'll see some players based on their projections would maybe have the same stats every week, but where you'll start to see an influx is the probability that it'll go to a map 5. As you know, playing an extra map means more fantasy points. So if this person has a matchup where our projections are saying we think this is a 3-2 type game, then you will see those players weighted heavier. So as a strategy thing, it's helpful to think about when you pick players that way. It actually pulls in we have a line to Vegas sports line makers that we also tie into our own projections to determine if there's a higher probability of a player playing 5 maps.
Well, that's something we talk about here. It feels like almost every week, because I know like Ed's not here tonight, but Ed and I differ a lot, where Ed's very much about like you have to just assume people don't go to map 5s. But we're talking about like teams like Boston or Philly where they go to map 5 like almost at least once a week. So I really like that that's kind of a feature in there, because
and Houston recently.
Yeah.
Well, those map 5s like are what determine a lot of matchups. Like they've won me games, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, because you're picking up like another 30, 40 points.
It's overtime. Like NFL, like when you're playing fantasy football, you're like, yeah, they're going in overtime. All right, we got this.
And this is why the Rameses starting half of the Boston Uprising lineup strategy will work once again. I'm telling you guys.
Yeah, and we do kind of with our lineups. One of the restrictions is right now is you can't start more than 3 players from an individual team. But if you're confident that's going to go 5 maps, you could stack 3 of them, of their best players, and probably end up with a pretty high score there. But it goes 2 ways. If you're wrong and the other team just gets absolutely annihilated and blown out, half your lineup probably isn't really pulling its weight. So that kind of adds that level of strategy. And there definitely is, as watching the season, watching fantasy points come in from our side, the 5 maps is definitely a big factor, because it's almost even more than overtime in football, right? Because that can last a minute, that can end in a field goal. This is another full match where that lineup that's playing is getting potentially a lot more points. So we do weight it, and that's why every Monday you'll see before we update players' prices every single Monday, going into so you have time to set your lineups, you can adjust them, and that's why you'll see variations every week. This week there definitely are Atlanta players that are ranked a lot higher. We do try to kind of average it in. You're not going to see the player's price change between like a Thursday and a Sunday if they're playing twice. We do kind of, it's just, we want people to be able to enter as many contests as we want, and that if we're switching it, then we limit the amount of contests we can make, and then also you don't want someone having a different salary cap than the other team. It wouldn't be fair. So, but on our projections, they were saying Atlanta, has the highest probability of going to 5 maps at least once, if not twice, probably just once. But it kind of has that competitive scale. So that's why. So yeah, every week you'll see new players. You won't be able to put the same lineup in that you were the previous week. And, our commitment to making that fun and competitive, and to be able to make lineups that are really fun so you can follow the players you want to see, but then also not just overly stacked where you just, have 6 of the best players that are just going to dominate and then call it a day.
Yeah, I remember when the Dynasty were kind of going through their multiple switches, and this was like when you guys were kind of like during your closed test, and there was a point where they were playing highly more times than not, and I was like, do I gamble this? Because like highly at the time, I think was only like 4.
It was like a 6 or
Yeah,
something.
it was like really low, and I was like, you know what, this is too good of a. It's a very high risk, high reward. I'm like, I'm just gonna do it, and then like I was still able to field literally any other player for the other 5 slots, and I'd, be able to, cherry pick the best players with the highest projections, or who I thought like was going to be the best players, and it worked sometimes, and it didn't work other times, but there were so many fluctuations, and it's curious to just kind of like see, with how much substitutions are going into these games for some of these teams, where their contract or their price is going to fall. Whereas like someone like I mentioned earlier, like great, like he's been averaging, I want to say like 14 for his cost, which is relatively I would say on the lower end in regards to the flex supports in the league, but he's really been a monster in this particular format.
Sorry, who did you just say? I can look him up right now.
Gray from the Paris Eternal.
Let's see. Oh, okay. Actually, I only have the ones that are this weekend up. But for an example like that as well, last week, if you were Toronto played last week. So if Logic and Manchu would probably have been level 5, right? And now this week they're around 10 because they've actually started. They're projected to. We'll see what play time they get. They only played. One played an hour, one almost played 2 hours. So, they're kind of going into that starter spot, and, they're still lower price because there's potentially some risk involved. But so there's definitely opportunity to look and find lower price players at a value, especially because you can enter your lineup up until the second the match starts. So if if you're following the Twitters and paying attention to what's going on, or at least the up until the match starts, like start time, not when it actually starts after they've done 20 minutes of talking and bullshit. So yeah, if you want to gather your research and pay attention, that will help you with your lineups, and you will always be able to find value, but you might not find that same value next week because past performance is a huge factor, and that isn't overlooked between each week.
What kind of leagues are there? Can you make your own league? Is there leagues provided? Just give us a rundown of what different types of things you can do.
For sure, yeah. There's and we really want to make matches that are fun that people want to engage in, and then also really encourage users to invite their friends and introduce fantasy esports to people that might have not been exposed to it. So every week there will always be featured contests right at the top. Those are kind of our larger very large entry pools, and we will continue to adjust these and grow these as people use the platform. Those are kind of the featured ones where you can actually submit up to 2, sometimes 3 lineups. So if you're kind of wishing you're going back and forth between some, you actually have multiple chances to win. And then the one of the features we're really excited about, and I think a lot of our test users have been, is 1 versus 1s. You can join 1 versus 1 against it. You can just hop in at any time. They're always recreating, so you can jump into one, play a person, go head to head, and then also create your own. So you can create your own contest of one. You can create your own 1 versus 1. You can do 10. You could create a public contest of 100 people and see how many people fill that are using the site. You can make it and promote it to, if you have an audience or a group or a channel, you can promote it there. Right now, you guys have a featured contest right on the top of the site for anyone listening. I would encourage them to join, make lineups, and play you guys directly. I think that'd be
so in particular, the Sunday one is by far the most important one out of the entire week. But in regards to the 1v1, when you create this, do you have the option to directly challenge someone, or is it just kind of random matchmaking and who you're going up against?
No, so you can create one without inviting, or you can create a contest and direct another user, or you can target right to their email and get them on the site. And you actually get experience points for doing that. yeah, you can absolutely create your own private league. You can create your own public league. Really, whatever you want to do there to, engage with users. And there are we have set up a Discord for people to talk. But actually, when a contest is live, you can chat and trash talk directly with the people you're playing as well.
Question on that: since I'm going to be out of town and at the actual game,
Flex, wow.
what is the mobile the mobile version of your site? Is
Yes.
that built out?
Yes. So the right now it, getting very close to where we want it to be with mobile optimization. It does, if you go to fantasyowl.com on any browser on your phone, it should function pretty much to where you want it. There's a little bugs now that the site is where we want it. There's a couple little things we're working on from a design perspective. One of the big things for a while was it was hard to view the level of the players to make a lineup. That's changing. That'll be fixed hopefully this week actually, and so it will be a lot more mobile friendly. And then also we are very committed to moving this platform onto an app as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I would be able to make fun of Rameses while he's not at the game.
Especially, I will say, looking at your leagues and if you made a lineup on the computer, you have a easier view to all the stats and how the player performances and things. But if you have a lineup made, viewing them on there is super clean. So you'll be able to see exactly how you're scoring and ranking against everyone else right from from a mobile browser.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is worth noting too that when it does come to the daily leagues that are available, there are some that are going to be single entry only, but you're also going to have leagues that will be marked with an icon to denote whether or not you can have multiple entries. So, if you're feeling like, the API might break on a certain day, maybe you field a couple of different, complete fresh rosters to try to combat that and see, how many coins you can rack up in that case. But, there is the option there. Or if you just want to go all in on another match, outside of a boss-in match, if you're feeling the need to, you do have that option as well. So you can kind of cherry pick as you go along and really determine how much effort you want to put into each week. If you just want to focus on one, if you want to focus on multiple leagues, but there are plenty of options out there. And I know for us especially, we'll probably do a couple of private ones. Maybe we'll throw some money on the line in some cases. But daily fantasy, really in sports lately, a lot of the intrigue for people does revolve around money. And that was the first thing I told Ed when we were talking about daily fantasy Overwatch League. I was like, great. So now, assuming the API works, given on certain weeks, it's you know what? I'm all in on this. You and I can bet every week. We'll see how the prices fluctuate as time goes on. We'll see who comes out ahead. But I know money is a driving factor for a lot of people. So what are the current plans right now in regards to money leagues?
Yes, so that's 100% on our radar and our pipeline, and we actually will. It can work for money. I mean, it's if you guys need to put a game on the line on the back push. We set up with that in mind, and then with the API being a little buggy on the Overwatch side, we just wanted to get a better handle on it because we don't want someone getting upset that they're losing money because of an error on the data collection side. We've actually set up for other esports like Counter-Strike and League of Legends. Those do have very reliable API providers, and we would feel comfortable running those. But obviously, Overwatch is a huge focus for us and where we have a lot of excitement. So we are going to. The plan is we can actually roll that out to a large number of states. Right now, just in the United States, to about 22 states. And so we will start to look at our user base, which ones are eligible, which ones are using the platform and playing, and do a rollout to them to test out and have the option to start to compete for money leagues. And then hopefully we can grow that into an for anyone that's on the site where they could join those leagues if they are in a approved and legal state that allows it.
Awesome.
Well, I'm not sure if it's connected, but something I was excited about immediately when I first looked at your test site was the coins and XP. It looks like there's
Yes.
another mini game on
Yes.
top of just playing daily, like a progression of sorts. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, there is, and we really wanted to, one of my original goals with this whole thing is to really gamify it and make it and have even if you're not playing for money, have incentives to compete and have a way to show how well you're performing at things. So there is a right as you join, there is a level progression bar. And there actually is, even though it might not be spelled out right away, this would be good to inform. There is a clear distinction between unranked and then ranked players. So you start out at level 0 like everyone else. And as you interact with the site, you join contests, you invite friends, you gain a basic level XP that brings you up. When you reach level 10, you unlock basically competitive contests. So when you reach level 10, you'll get 1,000 coins. That will open up contests that we'll start to open up and test out in stage 4, where these are really, one, you can't, there's achievements built in the site. A lot of them can only be built on by playing competitive contests where you have to put some coins on the line, because these are kind of one of the more valuable pieces of the site. You can always build XP, but really when you start to play a competitive contest, then you'll start to see a real difference. And like, if you come in first, you'll get a ton of XP and you'll win the coins. And we're going to be offering free contests where you can use your coins. So if you unlock competitive contests, you'll start to see featured contests where you can enter with coins and win jerseys, win, Twitch all access passes, all sorts of things. We're going to do a rollout of that for each week of stage 4. So, join a bunch of free contests this week so you get some coins, and that'll carry over into the next stage. And then and I mean, as you know, like in-game economy is very, it's the people have whole professions around that. We're playing with it. We want to have it included. We're going to have some fun incentives for it. As you level up, you do earn badges around your profile pictures. So when you enter a contest, everyone can see what level you are. They can click your profile, see all the achievements you've unlocked. There's some really difficult to get achievements. There's some basic achievements. There's special ones. And this is actually where a lot of my work, I do a lot of design work. So these are all these unique OWL themed achievements. So 1 versus 1 me bro is an achievement. Win 25 competitive 1 versus 1 matches. Mr. Know-It-Owl win and place in 10 competitive tournaments in the top 10%. But the difference is these aren't free ones, because you could abuse it. You could, right now there's tons of free contests. You can enter and earn XP for that. Once you get your coins, those are kind of valuable. Those are where you're really going to get to play with some of these mini game features within the site and
Super
challenge.
Cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
It will grow, and we want to have digital unlockables and things like that. We're going to grow that with this. So all I can say for now is coins are a good thing to have. Bet your friends, try to take theirs away, and we'll keep coming up with cool ways for you to use them.
Yeah, it's basically like Mario Kart. You don't want to lose your coins.
Right. Yeah. But you can still play without them.
Yes, this is also true. So one of the other things that I know, Bob, you were definitely on board with early on was the allegiance images that we saw on the website. So tell us more about the background on that and how soon we can actually get our hands on these profile pics.
Yeah. So when we're doing this, this even though yes, there's the direct correlation between OWL, but the site is called Fantasy Owl. Owls are a big kind of our brand, our mascot, our theme to this website. And so we thought it would be fun to take a little spin on all the teams, but have a unique owl spin. I'm a designer primary first, so this is a fun project. This is a fun aspect for me. These are all guys that I've worked on specifically to, you can kind of show your, the team you support, but also still have a spin. So a little spin on it. So what we have is, 20 unique owls that all represent your favorite Overwatch team in some way. And right now, if you go to the site, you can click the link. We're going to have it so you can actually just set it right from the profile, but we wanted to speed things along so that when you log in, you'll see a declare your allegiance ad right on the side. You can click that. It'll take you to an imager page with all of them, and you can download them and sport them right now.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I think it's pretty funny. Like, I did a similar thing. We named our podcast Owl Recap, and then we made the logo like it looks kind of like an owl, but not exactly. But I like how you guys went all in. Like, Rameses wanted me to do a April Fool's episode where we just talked about actual owls the entire time.
Oh yeah, it's great, and also too, we want to, Overwatch is a big focus, but we are very soon going to have offerings for Counter-Strike and League of Legends very soon as well. So we wanted to be able to grow that in some way, and like the company itself that we started to do this is actually called Nocturnal Gaming. So yeah, we're all in on owls. So yeah. But and I think these were so fun to work on, and they've received such positive feedback. I think one of the things with coins, especially, I'll continue to design these and have even cool, more unique ones, maybe some that are specific to your favorite player, and kind of different ways like that. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to, besides all the development side, to be able, my background and my primary focus is design. So being able to show that off has been a blast.
Pretty cool.
So, looking back at sets really quick, is there any way to kind of track how a player has been doing week to week?
Yep. So anytime you click, we actually are working on a page that is just a constant hub for every single player. But when you're going to pick a lineup, so if you click join a contest and create team, before you have to enter your lineup, you'll see the list of all the players that are playing that day. If you click on the player, a profile page pops up right away, just like how it would on Yahoo or ESPN, any site that shows their stats per stage. So you can actually see their total of what they scored last week, the week before, 3 weeks before, fantasy-wise, and then their total number of eliminations, their deaths, their damage, their healing, and then there's another line for their time played and their total on the season. So we, when we take the average fantasy points, we try to make it after a week or two. We have it focus more into per stage, just because it messes with the pricing too much, where you might see a player that's level 17, but their fantasy points per game is 0. That means they haven't played this stage, and there's been a bit of a shift. So, but yeah, I mean, you can click on every single player, and if they've played, their stats are there and collected.
Oh, that's super cool. That's something I've really been wanting.
Yeah, that was a really big focus for us, and it, to make it really feel like traditional fantasy, and you can view their stats, and right from that pop-up, you can add them to your lineup.
All right, so outside of that, does anyone else have any questions for FOWL before we start to wrap up the show for tonight? Whether it is, one of the co-hosts here or anyone in Twitch chat that is hanging out with us tonight. Now would be a good time.
I know, I was wondering who is...
currently dying, and that would be great.
Bob, you're up, go.
Oh, no, I pushed, you know how pushy I am. I pushed my questions in throughout.
All right, there we go. I'm still alive. So as of today, who is currently the highest price player available?
Baby Bay.
I know Baby Bay. I thought Baby Bay was at the top. I wasn't sure if he was the top. He
is 20. He's 23.
And then Sinatra's up there too. I want to say he's 22, if I'm not mistaken.
Sinatra's been up there a lot, and it's hard to keep him up there when there seems to have a tendency for the API ACL tears. But no, for this weekend, so I can give you a rundown real quick. Baby Bay is level 23 at the lone top. Dogman is at level 22, averaging 194 fantasy points per game. Then you have Nene at 22 as well, who's averaging 103 fantasy points per game. And then you have EQO, Jonak, Boombox kind of falls under there. And then those are all the people in the top 20. And then it starts to drop down to 19, 18, 17 as you go. But yeah, Bebe is number one, alone 23, which is a, as far as our platform go, is a pretty high score. Mm-hmm. So, and he does have the highest fantasy points per game out of anyone in this stage. For this weekend, I'd have to look at everyone else, but
so outside of that, one of the things that I'm always interested in is seeing how well I'm doing up against the rest of the users throughout like the entirety of the stage, or just like seeing like who is putting up like the highest total across a platform. Do you have any sort of like global leaderboard in mind so we can kind of see how we're doing up against people that are outside of just the contest that we're currently competing in?
Yes, so that is going to be going live shortly. We were just working out a couple things on that, but that is where you'll be able to see every user on their platform, and it'll be ranked by the points that they're scoring per match and so that's where a lot of these levels come in. So it'll be organized by who are the highest level players, so what they've gained from experience points. They'll be you'll be able to see their profile picture, you'll be able to click them, see what achievements they've unlocked. And, we have really decorative, profile badges that go all the way up to platinum, from bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, building up throughout. So you'll get to see who the top players are. You'll know if you're playing some big fish in a contest you enter, and you'll know if you're ahead of them. So because any league that you're in as well, there is an active leaderboard that you can click and view your leagues and see who you're up against. So yeah, the global leaderboard's coming soon. We're just working out, how just fine tuning how we want to rank that, because experience points are one thing and your level rank is one thing, but then it's also not fair that if someone just invited 1,000 people to Fantasy Overwatch and they leveled up really quick, that they'd be at the top. So we're thinking of, we're playing with, showing what their average score per game is as well, and some of their match history.
Awesome. I think really the only other thing that I'd be curious about is just getting an idea of like what the highest score has been as a whole for a team, or have you guys been like keeping track of that to kind of see how much the points have been fluctuating between the users?
Is this a humble brag for you?
No, I was just curious. Like I know,
Wow.
Like I know, I put
Bob
up
then
a
Totem.
couple.
Wow.
Well, like I'm just curious because I've had a couple of weeks where I have put up 1,000+ points, but I was just curious, like what the highest total has been so far.
One of yours was the highest, and it's hard to say because the price, the level caps are so different, and we've messed with it so much. Where some weeks there's just really soft scheduling where. And that's where now we feel like we have a formula that actually prices people in a way that, you're not putting super stacked lineups together. But I will say, as from the last two stages, what I've been playing with, you did. I'll have to go back to our Discord chat, but I think you just touched under like 1,200, and that was a stomping. And you still had like another player to go, so you did have one of the highest.
We'll see if that holds.
Yeah, we'll play it too. And actually, if so we have that featured contest for you guys. So whoever you guys can talk about it next week. See who puts up the highest between everyone.
Jeez.
Well, I know I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how many people.
I'll jump in too. It's not. I don't know if it's fair that the creator of the site does, but honestly, you guys will probably still kick my butt.
I mean, it's worked out fairly well so far. So
yeah. But some of those lineups, I'm just truly putting people in to see if they're getting.
This is also true. And then other weeks, people just aren't signing up. So there are times when there's only like 3 or 4 people right now. But that's going to change.
Yes.
So
now
the platform.
Yep. So now, FantasyOwl.com's free to share and post. You'll this is kind of the last as this weekend goes in. We're encouraging anyone to jump in, but you'll start to see our actual push. We'll be posting on the forums, Reddit, and everything leading up to stage 4, so people have time to get familiar with the site before the matches start. We may offer matches for stage playoffs. Last stage playoffs, the stats were a bit wonky, so I don't know if we want to start out on that note. We'll keep an eye on it. If we feel comfortable with the API getting scores, then we will have daily contests for the stage playoffs, which is something I've always really wanted and was excited about from a daily side. So definitely going to be keeping an eye on that as well, because as far as fantasy goes, being able to offer something during the playoffs that would be the only option, and we want people to be able to play throughout.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I know I'm looking forward to it. I know all of us here on OTBL by the Numbers are looking forward to it, and just bringing more people to the platform and seeing just how far we can take things. But with that being said, I know we have ran quite long for what we're used to doing on this particular podcast. But you know what? We got all the information out there, so everyone can go sign up at fantasyowl.com. Get registered. It will send you an activation link, hopefully. Hopefully there's no hiccups there. But if you need to get your account flagged by FOWL, be sure to reach out to him over on Discord.
Yes, yeah, no problem. Let me know, because we think everything's working now. So and we do have a Discord channel set up right from the homepage. So feel free to jump in if you're having any issues.
Do people need a referral code or anything?
Nope, but you can refer other people to the platform. But no, right now, if you just go to fantasyowl.com, anyone can log in and make an account. And if you want to get some early XP points, jump up to that can unlock competitive contests quickly, you can do that by going to the invite player, and you'll automatically level up if you invite another user.
Fantastic. So with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and close out the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, one of the best things to do is to go leave us a review over on iTunes. I got here very last minute. I do not have iTunes open to let you know if we do have a new review. So hopefully we don't, and then I'll just pretend that we don't. But, if there is one there, we appreciate it. And if not, it'll just be like a normal week. But we're always looking for ways to improve the show, to make for a better listening experience for you, whether it's this show or really any show on our network. And of course, if you guys are also looking to find some additional Overwatch related content out there, we do have an awesome hub for that. So Rameses, why don't you go ahead and let them know about our Overwatch recall?
There we go. For sure. Sorry for all the coughing this week, guys. So Overwatch Recall is a great resource you can use to find a bunch of different Overwatch podcasts. I think I have a throat bubble, sorry. Bunch of different Overwatch podcasts, whether it's just Path to Pro with contenders, or you want your general Overwatch podcast that just deal with the game itself more, or just more Overwatch League. There's a bunch of different shows to be able to just find and listen. So we put out a weekly listing every week. That's redundant now that I say that. But we put out a listing of every Overwatch podcast that we think you guys should hear. You can find it at owlnshow.com/OW Recall. The listing's released every Sunday night. And then is the best way to keep up to date with OW Recall is, of course, on Twitter at OW Recall.
Absolutely. And I know, we've been doing a lot of updates with the podcast directory. I'm kind of struggling with determining whether or not I want to keep adding video casts to the list. So if you guys have any feedback on that, please let me know. Because there are a lot of Twitch only video casts or stuff that's only uploaded on YouTube that haven't hit iTunes or Spotify or things like that. And there's always kind of the internal discussion with me of should I add them or kind of have them in their own separate area, just include them. I don't know, it does get to be a lot of work when I start to incorporate all of that stuff. But with that being said, of course, we have a number of different ways to get a hold of us over on our network. So Bob, why don't you let our listeners know how they can reach us?
Oh god, this is the first time you've had me do this. This is a mouthful, so I'm gonna try and go through it.
If you slow down, I'll just take over.
Well, I was just gonna go fast.
That works.
So you can email the show, contact@owlnshow.com. The Twitter is Al by the numbers. The website is www.owlnshow.com. The YouTube is youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. The Discord is discord.me/OWLN Show. The Twitch is twitch.tv/OWLN Show. We are Twitch affiliate, so help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn a network emoticon. The podcast network streams regularly. We have Overwatch League Network airing Monday nights at 7 p.m. PST. We have Al by the numbers that airs Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. PST. Heroes Never Die, a variety Overwatch podcast, airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. PST. Host streams, which don't happen a ton, run on a flex schedule, so be sure to follow us on Twitch so you know that when we're going live. We are also on Patreon. That's patreon.com/OWL Network. We recently launched our Patreon page and need some further support. Tiers start at just $1 a month. You can join people like me, Brendan, Joseball, and Al in helping the network grow.
Wow, he made it through. All right, and of course, with that being said,
You did it,
guys,
Bobby.
I do again want to thank FOWL for coming on the podcast for tonight to tell us all about fantasyowl.com and his platform. So FOWL, thank you so much again for taking some time out. I know it's been a little hectic at times dealing with some of the behind the scenes stuff, so anytime we get to sit down and talk to the other creators is always a pleasure.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. I do want to just, as has been developing us through the whole season, whether you realize it or not, you guys have had a impact on it even before we were talking. Just having a source to listen to people talk about fantasy Overwatch in general had been both motivating and eye-opening from the core development right from the beginning of what we were doing, because it does take a different perspective and a different type of viewing to understand it from not only a competitive perspective, but then the fantasy aspect to it. So, listening to your podcast was part of my morning routine and has helped develop this platform into what it is. So I'm really happy you guys had me on.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and with that in mind, too, we will also incorporate probably a specific segment for daily in regards to the format. So I don't know if that's going to, cover, our specific, promoted league, or if it's going to be just an overall, here's who we feel like is going to be a good fit on, X day or whatever. We'll sort that out, but it will be incorporated into this podcast moving forward. But with that being said, guys, of course, definitely go fantasyowl.com, register, get signed up, join the Saturday and the Sunday contest, especially the Sunday one, because that's ours. That's our listeners' league.
Please.
And, we'll see how many people are going to put up, 1,200 points. But with that being said, of course, you can reach all of us over on social media. You can reach myself on Twitter at TumblerDrunkCTR. You can find Edinar, who's not here, because he's, doing other stuff. I don't know what Ed is doing. He hasn't been hanging out in chat. I'm going to call him out. But you can find him on Twitter at Edinar Overwatch. Rameses, where can our listeners get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ramses_OW. And we're still trying to decide how much we want to suffer for this Mangachu versus Defran battle.
And of course, you can also find him on Push the Point.
Push the Point, yeah. Push Point POD is the other show I do, which, yeah, new episode today.
Fantastic. Bob, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Blazin_Bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB.
Now, FOWL, I know, you said you're not too active on Twitter. Do you actually have one that you've incorporated for your Fantasy Overwatch League site?
Yeah, I believe we were just setting one up, and we are going to be posting some cool tools that can help you research I will. I'll get you all those links because I think we just set it up, but I believe it is Fantasy Owl Live or at Fantasy Owl Live
Okay.
on Twitter.
Sounds good. I'll be sure to add that to the show notes for this episode. But with that being said, guys, we are going to call it here. Thank you so much again for hanging out with us tonight on another episode of OWL by the Numbers. This has been episode number 22. We've been talking all things daily fantasy Overwatch League. I have been your host, Totally Drunk, joined by my co-hosts Rameses and Bob, and of course joined by the Daily Fantasy Owl himself, FOWL. So we will hopefully see you guys back tomorrow night for what should be another fantastic episode of 2 hours of Ed and I ranting about random things about Overwatch on Heroes Never Die. But take care and have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Night, everybody.
Later.